You seem hyped this morning.
Trying to be hype, trying to hype myself up. Let's go.
So I guess we're gonna do Leviticus 18:22.
I'm so ready.
You're ready? I've got like I researched the crap last like during my shift, so I'm like ready. I'm pumped.
Yes.
So do you want me to just do the intro real quick and then tell
Mm.
people how they can follow us and all that fun stuff? We can do that in the beginning now, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So welcome back to another episode of Queer Christian Family Values Podcast. Today is a doozy that we're going to be covering. It's going to be on
y'all.
doozy. It's going to be on Leviticus. I am your host or co-host, really, Alex Birchnell, and
I'm Andrew Cox.
Yay, there we go. And if you want to support the show before we get started, as always, remember, go to patreon.com/QCFE. And I actually wanted to thank our Patreons because we got a new Patreon supporter as well. So we've got Michael, Rebby, Bash, Jamie, Debbie, August, Megan, and the newest, Noah. Wah. If you would like to have your name in the credits during our shows, then subscribe. That's all you got to do. Do it for $1. I mean, dollar make you holler, right?
Dollar makes us holler. We will
Dollar
holler.
makes, yes, we will holler.
For $1.
Andrew, how can people follow you or get in touch with you?
Right. Okay. So I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Facebook. And I'm on Twitter. Look up Andrew Harrison Cox. Just my full name, no spaces, and you'll find me.
You're pretty easy.
I'm pretty easy. That's what
for me, I guess now you can follow me on TikTok. That happened. That was scary.
You're blowing up on there too. You're doing a good job.
Yeah, I went from like 30. I'm almost at 500, I think. I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot in comparison to TikTok's algorithms and whatever numbers, but I was just I got freaked out in a day. I had that and like I saw all the numbers, so I had to put my phone away. Anyway, so Mr. Alex Birchnell is where you can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I think I also have a Tumblr technically, but nobody uses Tumblr. So that's another thing. And with that, I think we can dive into it.
Let's do it, Alex.
So Andrew, do you want to read the clobber passage of Leviticus, or I don't care.
Yeah, you read it. I've got my own books open for this one. I've got books out. I'm ready.
I should have been prepared for, actually, no, I think I have it in my notes. Yeah, I got it here. Okay. This is the King James version, which usually people want to use the King James version with this.
Well, Alex.
Yeah.
If it was good enough to be carried by the apostles, then it's good enough for us today, you sad little gay heathen.
Yeah, I know. Are you referencing the lady from my TikTok?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. So
that's the thing I'm doing
right for now. People that want to know, there was a lady on my TikTok where I asked her because she decided to leave pretty much homophobic remark, but
they were homophobic.
They were homophobic.
They were homophobic.
Yeah. And I basically was like, does the original like Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek of, the scriptures, does that mean anything to you? And she was like, well, if English was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. And
she said that, y'all.
She did. And I didn't. How can you respond to that? And I probably was not nice enough, but I did. Somebody made a snarky comment and I said, probably the same kind of person that thinks that Jesus was white. So
that is completely reasonable assertion, because like English is not exactly, historically speaking, the language of melanin.
Boom.
So fair assessment, Alex.
Okay, so I don't feel so bad about making that. I was like, I'm not as nice and calm and like serene sounding in my responses as Andrew can be. So I was like, I don't know. Okay, Leviticus 18:22 is where we're going to start. And this is how it goes in King James. And I also have the NIV version. But King James, thou shalt not lie with man as with a woman. It is an abomination. And then the NIV says, do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. That is detestable. Um, Living Bible, apparently, I have several. I didn't realize that I had all these. Living Bible says homosexuality is all absolutely forbidden, for it is an enormous sin.
Wait. Help me out here. Some decisions were just made with this text, right?
It was. Mm-hmm.
Could you read the King James and then read the You said Living Bible?
Living Bible. So,
Living Bible? Yeah.
yeah.
Because all right, listeners, we're gonna go back to Sesame Street for a moment. It's the street we all wanted to live on. We're gonna visit, and we're gonna play a game called One of These Things Is Not Like the Other. What is the translation difference between these two texts? All right, Alex, give us the King James.
Okay. Thou shall not lie. Hold on. Give you the King James. Thou shalt not lie with a man as with a woman. It is an abomination.
Okay, thou shalt not lie with a man the way
Mm-hmm.
one lies with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thou shalt not lie with a man the way one lies with a woman. Got it. What does this Living Translation say, Alex?
It took it a leap. It says homosexuality is
Whoa!
absolutely forbidden, for it is an enormous sin.
All right, y'all. Let's have a conversation about the difference between translation and interpretation. Am I jumping
Go.
the gun? Can I do
No,
this?
go for it. Just
Okay.
have at it. You've
All right.
been pumped.
All right. Okay. There are words in other languages that when we translate them, that word means a series of things based on its interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'll give you an example. Yod in Hebrew, and maybe you could like do a graphic. That's up to you. That's fine.
Dad, there's this turkey dancing in her ear.
There's a turkey dancing in her ear? Yeah. That's so silly.
There's a
My
turkey
daughter,
dancing.
y'all. You got a free one. Okay, so the Yod is basically an upside down hockey stick with
Yes.
a dot, and it means and, but, also, or even.
Okay.
So depending on the context, it means one of four different things.
Wow.
Okay?
Language is important, y'all.
Language is important. Now, and people are like, well, that should be obvious. It's not. I'm gonna give you an example. Okay. In Song of Songs, there is this description of the woman that is the lover of who is assumed to be King Solomon. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In this one moment, it says that she is black or dark. So black, dark, brown, tanned. Like the assertion is of dark skin, even for that culture. Okay.
Okay.
Yod, and then beautiful or attractive. So the word there is beautiful, attractive, or homely. In other words, like passingly attractive, attractive enough, or gorgeous. So like it's a range of possibility. Kind of, and that may sound like, hey, how can language work that way? I'll give you a great example. The word nice in English. Okay. What does nice mean?
It could mean a few different things depending on.
Yeah. But like if you meet someone, like an old lady, and you go, she was so nice.
Uh-huh.
What am I saying?
She was probably kind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now if I watch the Snyder Cut and you're a DC fan and you go, how was it? Was it the best thing ever? And I go, it was nice.
It was okay.
It was okay. Right.
Like,
If I go on a first date and you set me up,
mm-hmm.
and you thought that we were gonna hit it off, and he said, "How was the whole evening? Did you enjoy yourself? How was she? How were they? Was it?" And I was like, "It was nice."
It's like you weren't really feeling it fully.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it either means kind, fine, or intolerable.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
That's that you can do that with so many other languages. I feel like we were doing something in a podcast where we talked about bow. Like that word could mean different things.
Right.
Cool. The word cool could mean something different.
Right.
Awesome. Like there's just so many different words, even in English, but Hebrew is crazier because of the
Because of the poetic license that is so common. Okay, so what happens in this text in Song of Songs is old translations make the yod but. Let me explain.
Mhm.
It says she's black, but she's beautiful.
Almost like the skin color could potentially make her not beautiful.
Exactly. Like, despite the problem of her black skin.
Yeah. Oh, that's creepy, but okay.
Right. But by the way that it's being suggested throughout the whole text, there is no contextualization that suggests at any point in time that her skin color is seen as a problem to her lover. There is no context for that. It was just an assumption made by white translators that why does he love this black woman and think she's beautiful? Well, she must be beautiful despite being black. That was a leap made in interpretation because of the opportunities in translation.
Gotcha.
So that happens all throughout Hebrew, all throughout Greek, all throughout all translations of all languages at all times. And the reason that we have these two different versions of Leviticus 18:22 is because they saw this language and went, oh, this obviously infers homosexuality. Obviously. So I'm just going to go ahead and call it that. I'm going to go ahead and make that jump to make it easier for people to understand. Now, is that kind of leap unhelpful for the Bible? Not at all. It is super helpful for the Bible. It is only unhelpful when the leap is wrong.
Boom. There you go. Yes. And so I'm on the mindset of, first of all, like, so when I started researching Leviticus, Leviticus is a holiness code book.
Right.
But for me, I do not think that yes, we're no longer bound in, the laws because, Jesus came, tore the veil, the whole that whole thing happened. However, but again, that could just be my personal perspective because Christianity has a wide denomination about views on that. But for me, even though we're no longer bound in those laws, as modern day Christians or mainstream Christians see, I still don't think that it had anything to do with gay people, especially when we start looking at the language. We look at Greek, we look at all these other things to truly understand what they're talking about. And when we dive into this, we're going to see that really it's either pagan temple worship or
we're jumping way ahead.
we are okay.
Leviticus.
I will cut that. Yeah, I'm cutting
we're in
that.
Leviticus.
No.
Can I set the stage a little bit?
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay. To talk about Leviticus, you have to understand basically the priestly legislative writings that are happening, which start earlier on. So, like, if you're reading this section of the Bible, it's really Exodus 25 through like Numbers 10 are all of these like legislative practices being given to people, specifically the Jews in the wilderness. And the reason they're given to the Jews in the wilderness is because they are trying to discern the difference between the culture they left and the culture they're going to. So the whole context here is, well, the context they're trying to write for, because it's not being written in the same time that it's suggested that it's being written in at all. But the time that it's being written for is the time period between Exodus and the Promised Land in the biblical narrative.
Sure.
So, like, don't be like the Egyptians and don't become like the Canaanites. That's what this whole thing is about. Now, that doesn't mean that these laws are showing us how the Egyptians were or the Canaanites were. Not necessarily. But it is trying to make a clear distinction of here is how you, as the Israelites, in the wilderness can effectively accomplish remaining God's people. That's the whole purpose of this whole text, whether it's holiness, whether it's moral codes, whether it's how to perform sacrifices. All of these things have the same purpose, and that is remaining God's people and surviving the wilderness.
Yes.
So
So
that's our
that
context.
stage, there you go. Well, okay. So if we're going to look at the sentence structure and break things down,
Right.
there's another translation. I'm not sure. It's an English translation. Um, a male shall not lay like as the lyings of a woman. Like it's
That's the literal Hebrew.
yeah.
That's the literal Hebrew.
So it's like if we're looking at that, it doesn't give you a lot of context of what exactly they're talking about. It could be a number of different things. It could be don't be well, so this may jump the gun. We can cut it if not. Tell me if it sounds crazy. But so in Roman culture, there it was very common for a man who was married, had kids, to also have sex with slaves, like uh, there was pederasty practices and everything,
Right.
but his masculinity was still intact because he was the active partner. He was the penetrator. I know that sounds really messed up, but
Well, no, yeah,
yeah,
he was the penetrator. But also like even if you were the penetrator, you could not like someone could not ride you. A man could not ride you. A woman could not ride you because that was the dominant position.
yes.
So like there's a lot of really interesting things happening when we think about what is machismo,
Mm-hmm.
what is masculinity from um, wilderness period, Israelite culture, the temple period, the
Mm-hmm.
second temple period, the Babylonian exile, the intertestament period with the Maccabean revolts, the early Roman culture. That's six off the top of my head that
Yeah.
we have going on here to embody. And but that's not even talking about the kingdom cultures from like the north and the south. So like there's so many different ideas of what makes a man manly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of them most certainly was your ability to be dominant in sex.
Yeah. And like they kept their masculinity, they kept their honor was a big thing of like they kept their honor because it was seen as normal. It was almost expected for a man in Roman society, which is or pagan society, it was common for this to be a thing, for them to sleep around with individuals that did not have honor, like slaves,
Mhm.
concubines. There was temple prostitution, which 99% of the time was young boys or young girls. I mean, that was a thing too.
Right.
And
Well,
so
because they couldn't operate as a um, a legitimate sexual partner.
in their culture, yeah. Well, I mean, in general, yeah, especially if they're
Well,
minors.
yeah, because they
Yeah.
can't reproduce. Like they cannot reproduce. They lose that part of this equation of preservation of culture by producing more children.
Yes. And so, but if you were a receptive partner and you were an adult male, that was horrible because you lost your honor at that point. So that's
Okay.
that's just kind of a stage, but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, and so what I like to do is I'd like to walk through it inductively. Just go like, let's take it step by step without too much conclusion on the front end to
okay.
go, what is this text doing, and how is it operating in all these other texts, especially within Leviticus 18? Because okay, these are legislative statutes. Okay, these are standards that are considered lawful. Now we look at this and we go, this is a religious text teaching us about morals. They
Mm-hmm.
are trying to set the stage for how people live their daily lives for the purpose of remaining lawful and holy, both. Like, so I mean, for us, we go, well, none of our laws look like this today necessarily. Not really.
No, no.
And it's because today we do not insert as much religious language or spiritual language in when we write our laws. It's not necessary, by the way, that we write our laws. The backbone for what they consider righteous or unrighteous is how in favor with God's will you were. So that's why we see these laws written this way. And so if we look at like the whole corpus of like, or if we treat it like an elongated pericope, Leviticus 18, like this whole thing,
Yeah.
it is trying to present an ethic to the people through the laws that are being written. And that, I think, will tell us a lot about how we should understand this text.
Okay. So I'll let you drive then.
Okay. And I'm not trying to drive. I'm just, it's just a thought that I think is important.
Yeah, no, I mean, I am good. I think my thing is wanting to dive into the more to go straight into the social context and what was going on there versus just step by step. So
fair.
Go.
I'll set it up with the pericope and then I'll hand it back over. How does that sound?
I am fine with however we do it.
Sorry, I'm not. You know.
No. I think I'm trying to jump the gun because I'm excited.
Well, it's a fun topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we look through Leviticus 18, it's pretty fascinating stuff because it is so sexual. There's so many different sexual things, and they're very, very specific. Okay, what some Messianic Jews do, and the reason I only target Messianic Jews is because Messianic Jews tend to be rather conservative. Usually, they tend to know at least a decent amount of Hebrew, and what they will say is that because the Hebrew is suggesting the both gender and age of the male in the beginning, a man shall not lie. With a woman, the woman is also feminine and an adult. Like that's not the word for a girl. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So a man shall not lay with and then there is a non-age associated word for male, just like male and female, like the separation between the two, male and female. That's the word there.
Yeah.
It's a grown man shall not lay with male the way a grown man does the lyings of a woman. And that's paraphrasing how the Hebrew would be written out. Okay.
Yes. Gotcha.
I can actually do the exact Hebrew if you want me to. I have my.
Yeah. No, go for it.
I have it right here.
You're giant.
This is the Biblica Hebraica.
Does it give you the translation or is it just Hebrew?
No, I just know it.
Oh, well, fancy. Go for it. That's the importance of learning Hebrew.
Okay, so it says translating. So basically, you shall not lie with a male as with the lyings of a woman. An abomination is that.
Word for word translation.
Yeah. Well, word for word, I cleaned it up a little bit. It's like would be, with a male you shall not lie. The lyings of a woman, an abomination is that.
Cool.
That's the literal, but that doesn't help you, right? Because it sounds like Yoda but drunk. It's not helpful. So people like to highlight that the word male here is not specific, as if that suggests any and all possible men ever.
Okay.
But that's not how laws are written. That's not how these laws, like whenever they want to talk about the kind of animal, they have the capacity to be hyper specific. Whenever they're talking about, the types of people in your family that you should avoid sleeping with, the laws are hyper specific. So all these laws are hyper specific.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
It's cold in the house.
Is it cold in the house? Thanks for letting me know, kiddo. All right, I need to work on this, okay?
You're okay.
I love you. Yeah. So the Levitical legislative writings have the capacity to be hyper-specific, and they are not here. But if we look at like the whole corpus of Leviticus 18, we see a pretty clear picture. All of these things are sexual. Every single one of these different things is very sexual. Leviticus 18:22 is unique because in culture at the time, you really don't find an inference against same-sex action like this. This is unique amongst our. And some would say that's an argument to suggest the holiness of God. Well, they weren't being holy, and the Israelites were. That's a pretty open claim without any proof.
Yeah,
because there's
it's more of a leap than anything.
Exactly. Like there's nothing, because all you have to do is say, okay, prove it, and you can't. It's like, well, you find it later in the New Testament. Is like that. You're just grasping at straws at this point. So there's one text in this that is not in any way about sex.
Okay.
There's one verse in Leviticus 18 that is locked with these sex passages that has nothing to do with sex. It's about child sacrifice.
Yeah, that would be bad.
But so like verse 21 explicitly prohibits child sacrifice.
Uh-huh.
And it's been included with all these other passages about the way that men have sex. This is about. Go ahead. What do you?
I was thinking, is it sacrifice or abuse or corruption? Because I've heard it translated not necessarily sacrifice.
It is a reasonable assertion to believe that this means to kill. It is reasonable to believe that.
Okay.
I understand some people would say that that's not it. It is reasonable to believe that this is talking about treating a child like they are the sacrificial lamb to communicate with a god or gods. That is a reasonable thing.
Okay. So I've heard that.
Put in with this sex stuff.
So we know we can link it. How would you link it, Andrew?
The Israelites were commanded to be fruitful and multiply.
Yes.
The multiplication being through sex and not by converting other people to Judaism. It was all about the bloodline, right?
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm.
We're talking about just use some big words here, an ethnocentric theocracy.
Wow. That.
Well, because like the bloodline for the entire nation is considered to be holy and worth protecting. Ethnocentric, based around ethnicity and religious practices. And all of these laws and standards are because of the rulings of God. So theocracy.
Yes.
So we're dealing with an ethnocentric theocracy that believe that God has set aside this bloodline to reproduce, to be a multiplied nation.
Yes.
You wouldn't put your sperm on the ground because it cannot produce children. That's why you don't pull out. You would not put your sperm in a man because men can't produce babies.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have sex with a woman on her period because of all the cleanliness rituals and all that. But also, they didn't think that women could get pregnant on their period.
Yeah, true.
So and also I'm not gonna get into that. But so kill a child is to actively destroy the agent by which this nation of God spreads.
Gotcha.
And to actively have sex with a man, any man, would actively destroy your capacity, at least in that moment, to continue the means by which the nation spreads.
Yeah. Not to mention they thought that literally life was in the male sperm.
Mm-hmm. And women just basically had like this pot.
Incubator or something going on.
Just like the womb was just like this. The womb was a room, and it was just like this thing. So like So I just want to set that out front. Like if you want like an early easy argument, also there is no mention against lesbians ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Also, it's not like they just left out the stuff about women because they said that women should not have sex with animals. And they made very specific, like they were so concerned about two things. The insemination through Israelite sperm and the regulation of Israelite uteruses. That was their concern.
Pretty much. So if the concern is, okay, this is my question. Do you think that they are prohibiting it explicitly, male on male sex, or like in this passage specifically? Or do you think it's really in reference to what I believe, at least, is that it's talking about temple prostitution or pederasty in this case?
What I'm saying is, I do not think that this is not talking about consensual male on male romantic sex. I don't think it's talking about that, but even
Yeah.
if it was, it would be doing so for a hyper specific reason.
Yeah.
And like the sexual ethic here is in no way applicable to how we think about sex today.
Mhm.
Most of us at least. And the sexual ethic is not being written for any time outside of the wilderness. Not really. So even if it was, and it's not, even if it was, it is not talking about gay love. It is not talking about gay romance. It is not talking about anything that would be applicable to what we have today in a more secularized, scientific birth control, no need to repopulate.
Yeah.
Also Christian as opposed to Jewish by and large society.
Yeah.
So even if it was, it wouldn't matter. That's what I'm saying. But I also don't think it is. Take it away, Alex.
Well, so this is just my perspective of, as I've researched, as I've studied, we can there is an argument for, I don't know what this means, right? It fully, because first of all, we aren't living in the culture, we aren't living in the society, we're not talking directly to these people. It was written in a language that was interpreted and translated and interpreted and then translated. And to be perfectly honest, the English Bible has a lot of leaps that it makes beyond just regular word for word translation, like we want to believe that that's what it's doing. Um, in Hang on, I'm looking at something. In The reason I brought up culture before was that it's all about dominance in the male aspect of things, whether it's Hebrew, Roman, Greek, uh, Egyptian, wherever they're at, it is a very, very male dominated. We see that throughout the Bible. And in the culture that it's in, the man is always having to be the dominant one. And you're going to see later on where it talks about not doing what's natural or forsaking what's natural for unnatural, however you want to put it. These are perceived men. Let me back up. These men, there's no understanding of sexual orientation, right? It's just assumed that if you're going to go after the same sex, it's just out of excess of lust, right?
Right. Or some spirit is acting upon you in this moment to make you have the wrong kind of sex.
Yeah. So they don't quite understand the concept of an attraction or orientation. All they know is there is, outside of the Israel or Hebrew tree, the surrounding cultures typically just assumed everybody's going to have sex with everybody, no matter the gender. That was typically an assumption, especially when it came to an older man, younger boy, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially if the older man is well-to-do owns land, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's been case studies of sometimes it's like a favor teaching the younger boy how to be a man. There's been instances of it being a slave or whatever, but in every single case it is still a power play. It is still an abusive situation because they aren't able to give consent. We talked about that. They don't have honor, or they don't have rights to themselves.
Right.
Same as if they were going to go sleep around with a concubine, or a slave woman, or even a young girl. Like, it was just a plethora of these men were married, presumably straight men, having sex with whoever the heck they wanted because they could, because they had that power trip, which was just expected in society. In Leviticus 18:22, though, I think it's talking about something very specific to temple worship, pagan temple worship. And I actually broke out, so plug for the Queen James Bible. For anybody that's interested, it is a Bible that has backed up research, and it's got source notes and everything, but it takes the clobber verses specifically and gives you a better idea of what they're about. We've talked in our last podcast about, actually, I don't think it was in our last podcast. It was probably off the air, but we talked about how sometimes they have to insert certain words. Actually, Andrew talked about it. You have to insert certain words for it to make sense.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I'm going to read it. If you are chill with it, I can read what they say it is a better translation.
Go for it. I'm looking for a thing in Hebrew that I want to bring up again. Go for it.
Okay. So Queen James version, 18:22 Leviticus says, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind in the temple of Molech. It is an abomination."
So, Alex, we just stepped on an elevator together. We have 3 floors to go up. Can you quickly explain to me who Molech is?
Probably not. With Google, maybe. Hold on.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. And while you're doing that, I want to bring up something else. So, like, there's another weird thing that's happening in this verse that we don't talk about much, and I wish we did. So, like, let me see if I can read this Hebrew straight. Yaeb, Zakar, Lo, Toshabeb. Oh, here it is. So there's this word here that is basically miskebe, okay?
Uh-huh.
Miskebe, or miskebe, or miskebe. Or that's a shem, mishkebe. So this word only happens one other time in the Torah. It is unique to the Hebrew scripture.
Okay.
It is plural, and it only happens in this way one other time in the Bible. One other time. And I actually found this little article that talks about how weird and rare this word is. Okay. Mishkave only occurs one more time in the entire Bible besides its parallel occurrence in Leviticus 20:13. In Genesis 49:4, the verse explicitly refers to the incestuous activity of Reuben with his father concubine Bilhah. That's the only other time it is ever used in the entire Hebrew Bible. While lyings or acts of lying down or beds are possible translations for mishkaveh, the comparison to the Hebrew singular word for bed, yatsua, subtly different,
Just a tad.
suggests that the two Hebrew words are not interchangeable at all.
Huh. Interesting. I'd never heard of that at all.
That's why I brought out the Hebrew. I got my Hebrew.
Well, I looked it up and it rung a bell. So now I remember who Molech is.
Yeah, tell
So
me about Molech. Tell me about Molech.
well, so Molech is kind of like it's basically a pagan kind of god for child sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially what it was. They would sacrifice their children to Molech, and whether it's for same thing that any culture was doing sacrifices for. They, prosperous in some way, maybe there was something bad going on, and they had to choose a child sacrifice. That was what was going on in Molech. It looks like it was happening a lot in the Babylonian area, all over, during this time period. It looks like it came about, what was it, from Ammon during the 7th century BC. Like that's when supposedly it was happening.
Okay.
But anyway, so Molech, child sacrifice. That was.
And so we see a lot of potential meanings here, right? Pederasty could be one. Having sexual temple practices is another super valid possibility here, right?
Yeah.
Exclusively incestuous love because of like the use of mishkabeh. For some of you that might be listening, that might be skeptical of all these potential meanings, like we're just trying to grab everything except the way that it's been interpreted for the past, brief time in human history. The reason we're doing this is because this is what happens when you need to translate an ancient text. The reason we're doing the work to translate an ancient text so hard and get the culture right is because we got it wrong. We got it wrong. We pretended that it was so clear. And the reason we were able to do that is because denominations and organizations that fund the translation or retranslation of a Bible get the final say. They get the final say on what goes in. This happens all the time, where a team of translators will go, hey, we did the translation work. Here's the 3 possible meanings. Here's the 4 possible meanings. Here's how these words could be interpreted. Yes. You'll notice that this line was skipped in the Hebrew. This probably goes here instead. And that stuff happens all the time. It is so super common. And if you spend any time, look at this. Look at this, viewers. All right. Okay. See all these little random notes down here? See all this? These are all the mistakes and patterns on this one page. That's what's happening here. That's how often mistakes happen in Hebrew, okay? That's how often interpretive traditions change, and there's other texts. It is so super common. And the tradition gets to say, we're going to use this one because it aligns with our denominational tradition.
Yes.
That happens. If you think it happens sometimes, I'm talking every time the Bible's translated, that happens. Every single time. We're doing all this work because we got it wrong.
Yeah.
And we have to get it right.
And plus, look at the fruit of what these translations are doing, right? We always talk about whenever we hear a sermon by a pastor, even the most conservative pastor out there, they always talk about the fruit of whatever you're doing, that you will be able to tell something is good by its fruit, right? What is the fruit of translating something as condemning an entire group of people who are dying because of you telling them that they're evil or going to hell or just straight up messed up? Conversion therapy has failed significantly. What was the name of the biggest conversion therapy group that came up in the 90s or whatever? I don't know. Whatever.
About, but I don't remember their name.
Yeah. They look it up. They were huge, but they failed, and so many people died from this. What is the fruit of it? And I know that that's off of a tangent. That's what we are, but
no, but that's super valid because
that's what we have to relook at this.
We do. Like, we have a Christian tradition today where people will celebrate baptisms and not mourn the suicides, as if both aren't on them.
Yeah.
If you look at the fruit of the progressive church and the fruit, or we won't say progressive, we'll say affirming church, the fruit of the affirming church and the fruit of the non-affirming church, only one of those two churches has a body count.
Yeah.
That matters.
Yeah.
And
That should make you stop and at least consider looking at the languages and what we're really diving into. And I know, trying to double back, but like we talked about how where we were wanting to talk about Leviticus 2013, but they're so similar in the text that they kind of are grouped together in this at
yeah,
the same time.
arguably they are mirrors of each other.
Yeah.
Like one exists because of the other. So really today's about Leviticus 18:22 and Leviticus 20:13. Is that right?
Yes,
2013?
2013.
Yeah. And
And
by the way, they both use this unique word mishkaveh, which is only used in one other one other moment in the entire Hebrew Bible to talk about the incestuous bed behaviors in Genesis, what is it, 40 something, with Bilhah,
yeah, Bilhah.
who was I just talking about? I was talking about somebody. It's in there somewhere. It's in our so yeah. And I'll stand on this all day. Even if it is talking about men not having sex consensually with other adult men, it is so inapplicable
Yeah.
in every possible way to what is happening in the Christian world today. So inapplicable because the means of the reproduction of God's people then was Israelite sperm and an Israelite uterus. That was that was the whole mechanism right
Yeah,
there. Okay.
exactly.
Today, it is not that mechanism. The mechanism is exclusively conversion, baptism. That's how God's people are made today, according to Christian doctrine. And for us to pretend that it's this be fruitful and multiply thing, that's not the name of the game, y'all. Like, that's not. In fact, Paul in the New Testament, which we'll get to later, I know, but Paul in the New Testament, he straight up says, I prefer y'all just stay single and just do the gospel. But if you can't control yourself sexually, get married.
Yeah. And we'll address that. Something so if the listeners have stuck with us since last season, right? We learned about how to read the Bible. We in the Pauline epistles, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we talked about how each letter written by Paul was a letter to a specific church,
Right.
specific place, specific time, specific situation. How many times did I say specific? And
Ephesians was written to a larger context on purpose. But go ahead. Yes.
true. But if we look at these laws, the the Levitical laws, they were for a certain time period, certain people, certain place.
Right.
And you can't just take that and say, okay, well, they're telling this person. That's like telling, okay, so I have celiac, right?
Okay.
And let's say God came down with a tablet and said, don't eat wheat, barley, or rye. That doesn't mean that the rest of everybody has to do that. Like it's specific to these people. I know that was a weird jump, but stay with me.
No. What you're doing is you're contextualizing morality.
Yeah.
You're contextualizing ethics. And like the sexual ethic here is not about attraction. It's not about consensual sex between adults. It's exclusively seeing sex as a mechanism for the reproduction of people.
Yeah.
For specifically the Israelites. And so like we can read this wrong, but we implore you, listeners, understand that these texts only assert the morality that the text allows you to assert. It'll tell you what it's trying to say is moral, but also very clearly, the Levitical law were not written to you. They were written for a specific moment in time, and it's still useful to learn because you see a culture and you see the bedrock of a lot of different things.
Yeah.
That still makes it fruitful. That still makes it useful. But it is not giving you the way to operate your life, because we're also not telling women to go sleep in tents when they're on their period. That's not
exactly.
So like, please do not take this one verse, which does have New Testament implications that we'll get to later.
Mm-hmm.
But please do not take this one verse and pretend that it is in some way the only applicable use of this entire legislative body of writing for the Jews.
Exactly. So I have 10 minutes left. I think
That was pretty good.
yeah, it was.
Yeah, we knocked it out.
We did. And I'm like, I wanted to be able to do a second podcast episode in one sitting, but I really don't think that that's going to happen. But I think
I'm sick this week. Like,
it's been horrible. Don't get the stomach flu. Let's just say that. But so for these specific verses, my struggle is from a conservative, quote unquote, reading of scripture, where I tend to hold them as kind of like word of God in the sense of they were passed down for a reason, right? It's easier for somebody who does not hold it to that same level to grapple with this as being, well, it was for a certain people. It was just a culture thing. Whereas somebody who this has high meaning for them, right? So these Levitical laws, they were to help direct into the Messiah, right? Because the line of David, keeping that pure. That is the teaching and understanding of where I come from, is that the point of a lot of these laws were to make sure that that line, that prophetic line, went from Adam, Seth, all the way down the line.
okay.
But I still think that the argument you're making is still applicable for my view, right?
Yeah, may I try to contextualize it?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. If all of these teachings are from God,
Okay.
let's just say they are. Let's just
Okay.
say they're all from God.
Sure.
If all these teachings are from God, since they are all from God, isn't knowing how the people of God got here meaning enough? Isn't seeing what they had to do to survive powerful and emotive and beautiful enough to let it be valuable history, let it be part of the story that gets passed down?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes my concern with people is that we pretend, and it is pretending, that everything we hear is for our present day moral day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm.
When my grandfather had a stroke
Mm-hmm.
and no longer could tell stories, I was robbed of hearing his perspective. But thankfully, others around me would tell his story.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard those stories, I learned his legacy and how I got here. Like how I have what I carry in my body as a person because of what he went through, because I am his. But his decisions do not necessarily determine how I live my life. They inspire my life, but they do not inform it. I'll give you an example.
Okay. That was beautiful, by the way. But yes, go for it.
Thank you. When he got married, he was a mechanic,
Mm-hmm.
a good one, but he hated driving. He was taking a long road trip with his new bride. I think if I remember the story correctly, he was driving for the first time on a long distance trip. Every single time another car came down the road, he pulled over. Every single time. In front of him,
Okay.
towards him, he pulled over every single time to keep his family safe because he wanted to make sure he did it right.
Yeah.
When I hear that, I love that story because he is this giant, like, he's just this giant man, hands as big as your head, like And I just picture him in this little rinky vehicle with his 5 foot nothing bride stopping every 5 seconds on the side of the road. And I love that story and I love the image of it. And what that tells me is a lot of things. It tells me that he wasn't so proud that he was going to put other people at risk. He wasn't confident enough to drive on the road with other people. And that tells me he loved his wife and others.
Yeah.
What that does not tell me today is to pull over every time I see someone on the road.
True.
So it's valuable.
Yeah.
And applicable. But that doesn't mean I have to mimic it.
Yeah. Not to mention, you're in a different time period, right? In a much less safer time period, right?
Right.
So
and I know that, and that doesn't mean the story that so some people pretend that when you contextualize it, you're erasing the story. No. You're putting it in its rightful place of value. And that's meaningful. And we shouldn't let go of that.
Yeah. Wow, that was good.
Thanks.
That was good. See, like even your TikToks, just the way you're able to explain stuff. Like I was telling Chris, I said, so there's people that will leave like, you know that they're trying to get a rise out of you on some of the comments, right? Like, you know that that's what they're trying to do. But it's like, you're able to be like, man, I mean, here, you could maybe have that argument, but what about this one?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does he do that?
It's like, I think it's because at the end of the day, and this is true, and maybe we should do a one-off, like a Patreon episode where I'll talk about like theological praxis, like what it means to practice the way of Jesus and how we actually impact change in the world. But I know at the end of the day that someone's ideas and thoughts do not necessarily in any way translate to actions if they have conflicting self-interests that oppose those actions. So like, even if you convince someone that something is true, that doesn't mean they will ever act upon it, ever, if they have self-interests that conflict with doing it.
That's true.
And so I feel that my capacity to change the world exclusively through convincing someone that something is wrong is a limited lens. But I think that so instead, it's my faithfulness to what I have come to believe is the meaningful work.
Okay.
And so I just decide I'm just going to be nice to people and just because I think that because that's how I want them. That's what I want them to imitate.
Okay. I see what you're talking. Imitation is.
Yeah. I want to see others imitate kindness.
Yeah.
And so how can I expect other people to become more kind if I will not show them how to be more kind?
Sure. Well, like something that they teach you in de-escalation training, right, is if somebody's yelling, you talk very soft and calm, because eventually subconsciously they'll start lowering their volume. If you want them, if they're in an aggressive stance, you remain passive, relaxed. They will chill out in some aspects. They might still be pissed off, but they're not going to be screaming and yelling at you because they can't get a rise back.
Right.
So
and that kind of sucks because like the TikTok algorithm is like, if I'm not being really seductive or I'm not being really pissed off or I'm not being overly elated, a lot of people aren't going to see it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a gardening video that's going to sound inappropriate on the front end, like very inappropriate. And then I'm just going to change it. I've already got it planned out.
Oh no.
Can I tell you what it is?
Go for it. Sneak peek Patreon.
I'm going to explain it and then I'm going to say it.
Okay, go for it.
There are multiple different types of passion fruit. Okay.
Okay.
And passion fruit grows in a vine, and we have them on our property. One of the biggest distinctions between different kinds of passion fruit is if they're self-pollinating or not. And because it's such a big flower, they're really, really hard to pollinate.
Okay.
What you have to do is you take your hands and you stroke the innards of the flower like this, okay? And then you touch other flowers with it, okay? And you touch as many as you can with that hand, and you don't wash it. And so I'm going to teach people how to finger that passion flower. And
Please make that your caption, finger your flower or something like that.
I'm gonna.
Oh my God.
It's like today I'm going to figure out how to finger that passion flower. Don't wash your hands because you shouldn't, because you spread the gametes to all the different ones, and that's how you can get as many passion fruit as possible.
I think that's going to be perfect.
I think it's going to be great.
I'm going to have to do a reaction video to that because
Yeah,
I'm going to die.
Show you how to finger the passion flower. Go.
Let me continue.
It's just you have my attention.
Yes.
And it's just like, all right, so this is a passion fruit vine, and what you need to do is like see this, I got that one pregnant, and it's like, you know.
I think that you doing videos like that, because yeah, like spicy videos are about the only thing that hits that algorithm, and yeah, so. But I have to get off here. I have my niece's first birthday to go to.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, I haven't seen her since my mom's funeral, so
Oh,
well, I mean, COVID, so
yeah. No, that's just hard. I'm sorry.
yeah, but I really want to get there. We got her like a little gamepad thing. It's not like a iPad, it's like a button pad, but it looks like a tablet. But anyway, I do have to get off here. I have to shower.
Well, can you close this out and tell everybody what the next episode is going to be?
Yeah, sure. Let me scroll down on my little. I have so many notes. Hold on a second. Come on. I know it's going to be on First Corinthians. I just got to find the verse. I think it's First Corinthians chapter 6. Yeah. Okay. So I'll end it. Hang on. Thank you for listening to Queer Christian Family Values podcast with your co-hosts.
I'm Andrew Cox.
I'm Alex Birchnell, and stay tuned because we are going to tackle First Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 through 11 in our next podcast episode, which will come out Friday. So stay tuned. It comes out every Friday. Subscribe to our blog at queerchristianfamilyvalues.com. That way you get the podcast sent directly to your inbox as soon as it goes live. And make sure you sponsor us on Patreon at patreon.com/QCFV to keep this show going. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, send us a direct message. And with that, thanks for listening.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Good.
We did it.
We did it.
We get to be in some. I had to pull out my Hebrew books. I'm like, where? I was looking around this morning. I was like, where the crap did I put? And then I found this one. So.
Oh Lord. I feel like off today, and I don't know why. I think it's just recovering. I still haven't eaten enough calories. I'm still
this was just
under 1,000. It was very easy for you.
Well, no, like this episode was just very easy. Like it felt different. It felt like, I don't know. I feel like we're hitting a stride where it's like now we're just more comfortable doing this.
Yes, I for sure feel like that. I think we're finding our media personalities in a sense, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
So like, and I think TikTok has helped me significantly because it's like you have to know when to hit certain points and cues and put it all into a 60-second video. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you have to do retakes, not gonna lie, but I don't know. I feel like it's helped me be more animated. I don't know if that's what you want.
I think it has. Yeah. I think you've done great. I would say, like, how do you get closed captioning on there?
So I have an iPhone. Do you have an iPhone? Okay. There's this app for iPhones called Clips, but there's another thing. You have to download an app, right? Okay. And look an app in the App Store for your Android. Type in auto-generated captions. And what you'll do is you'll record the video to that app and then upload it to TikTok.
Okay.
Because that's what I have to do with mine. I have to record it in Clips, which is the same thing. It is an app that auto-generates your captions. You can edit the captions. Some of them you have to pay for. but it's like $1 a month or something like that. And it just auto generates the captions. Some of them come with really nice caption features, like cool little fonts and stuff. And then you put it up there, and you can even react to comments still. So if you click the little comment and react to it, instead of recording the video, you'll see that you can click in your little box, like pictures, videos, and then it'll still show you reacting to the comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And you figured out how to do the little like thumbnail with the little like logo on it.
Yeah, finally.
But yeah, I mean, there's
people seem to really like, dude, the amount of traction that I got on the gender identity one, the pronouns one, like that.
I saw it and I was like, oh snap, that it went over really well.
Yeah, I just like, yeah, no, it worked. It worked.
TikTok's a beast. I was not expecting. Oh, I hit 500 followers now.
Yeah, I have half as many.
I think it's because I made it a controversial topic, right?
I can see that.
And that's something that I mean, I didn't think that it would get traction, to be perfectly honest, but I do think it's because it's controversial. That's the only reason. You should do stuff on clobber passages.
I could do that. I'm going to do a series on. So, can I tell you about the trans series I'm going to do?
Yes, quick. Yes.
I'm going to start off by talking about all the different decisions a person must make to transition.
Sure.
So presentation is not a good argument to have from an ethicist perspective. What are the things that must be done to transition or to represent differently? Like hormone therapy, I think there is no strong Christian argument against hormone therapy. It doesn't exist. Because
I mean, true.
Think about all the ways that we do hormone therapy. Like
women going through menopause,
women who are infertile, men who are infertile, men who are getting older and want to still work out. Like no one goes, why are you taking testosterone? Isn't that against God's design for your body? Like nobody's saying that to these dudes, right?
Yeah.
And even like human growth hormone for, say, female athletes that can have some specific physical attributes. Like no one is making an ethical argument from a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
Those decisions. So we have to decide, is hormone replacement or hormone therapy inherently wrong or inherently right or amoral? We cannot say that it's only immoral in this one case because of what they're going to do with it. Like that doesn't make any sense from an ethicist perspective.
I think that it'll actually be a really good series. It's going to have to be multi parts, but
it's going to be like 10 videos.
Yeah.
Because after I do all the ethics, because I think there's like 5 things, and you could probably help me with this, that someone must decide to do to represent themselves as a different gender, or as a felt gender. Like there's so many things you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So lots of things. And it takes years.
My favorite one's the body modification. That's my favorite argument to have ethically, because Jesus is pro body modification if it reduces your capacity to sin.
Yeah. Cut your arm, your wife, cut your arm off, like poke your eye out.
I mean, so like, are we pretending that's a metaphor, or is Jesus that serious about stopping sin?
Right.
The person who has yet to have, say, a mastectomy and obsesses over their body because it is not how they feel they must represent, that is an obsessive behavior that prevents them from serving the gospel most effectively.
True. Very true.
Suicidal ideations that comes from a certain physical representation of your body, that is a specific problem that prevents someone from fulfilling the gospel.
Yeah.
Jesus says if something is causing you to sin, you cut it off.
Yeah, I did that.
What do you think? That's pretty good,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, so like Austin Hartkey, if you're wanting resources to look at, Austin Hartkey, his last name is Hartke, but he does a series, he has a playlist about trans people in the Bible and like or trans Christians and how he uses scripture to justify it. About there's some verses that talk about how it's beautiful that trans people get to play a part in creation.
Oh, because if they don't have because God took male DNA and made female?
No, he does not the verse. There's no verse itself that says you get to play a part, but he uses different aspects of people like in the Bible, people change their names, right? And there's different gender non-conforming aspects to certain stories, like Esau versus Jacob, right? Esau was the man's man, Jacob was the homebody cook. It was gender roles, and then you've even got some people saying Joseph could be considered gender non-conforming in certain aspects of role. It all has to play with roles, but
I mean, Jesus was definitely gender nonconforming.
yeah,
I mean, a 30-year-old
I gotta
Palestinian
go.
not pursuing marriage or continued bloodline through children.
Yeah, so I highly recommend because Austin Hartkey is so well spoken, and there was a statement, I shouldn't have said verse, but statement he made about the beauty of trans people being able to have a physical and present um, participation in creation for themselves. And
That's good.
it was cool. So
You need to go.
yeah, I do. I'm already getting like text. So I will talk to you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.